We're going to be talking about the investigation into Biggie's death. And part of the issue with the investigation in both cases was that people weren't really willing to talk to the cops. They were not trusting of them. They would prefer to talk to the FBI or maybe even entertainment interviewers rather than the cops. So first of all, I don't know a lot about ballistics, but the bullets used were Gecko, and apparently they're extremely rare in the US. They're mostly a European brand, so that could give us some insight into where this may have been from. And again, lots redacted in the FBI documents, but we also know that after Biggie was shot, an anonymous call was made to someone, I'm assuming a tip service, I don't know, in New York, stating the name of somebody who's unfortunately redacted who was involved. And they called the LAPD about it, but the name has 500 plus people in LA area, so they couldn't identify them on the name alone. So, common name at least, I guess we know that. Doesn't really narrow it down. There was a man named Amir Muhammad, whose real name is Harry Billups, and he was apparently a suspect for a while, but he was dropped from suspicion. And the actual FBI documents state that allegedly LAPD officers were involved in the setup for the crime, and that other LAPD officers may have sabotaged the case once they realized that some fellow officers were involved. And those people were sued for police negligence and for covering up a crime, although we don't get the names, of course. There's also an informant in the FBI document that, of course, we don't know the name of, but they stated that there were LAPD officers in the meetings talking about Biggie's hit. And most people's theory, and stated in the FBI document as a possible motive, is that Biggie's shooting was in retaliation for Tupac's. And a specific informant in the FBI document who was associated with death row said that somebody and his people were involved in the Biggie shooting and made it look like a retaliation for the Tupac shooting. And I honestly think that gives us more questions than answers. And also, multiple informants in the FBI document did make sketches, picked out of lineups, gave descriptions that all really matched. They all meshed up together. And there were also multiple people listed who were involved with death row records and also had evidence that linked them to Biggie's shooting. And that included an LAPD officer who had a shrine to Tupac, those who confessed others' involvement, who had the same very rare bullets, who matched descriptions, but of course, we get no names. There are 2 suspects specifically mentioned that are in hiding or will not talk about it, which is not necessarily suspicious if they just don't want to be involved with that kind of thing. I don't know their reasoning, but so we also get information in the FBI documents that some of the suspects are Muslim, and somebody whose felony probation was revoked and had to go back to prison realigned himself with the Muslim group within the prison. In my mind, I'm seeing Suge Knight, I will say, but let me know if you think it's someone else. It's just an opinion, alleged, a thought, not an accusation. Apparently also, and this came as a shocker to me at least, in the FBI report it says that Biggie and his friends were involved with the Genovese crime family in New York. One of the 5 families, aka the mob. Side note, that would be a very interesting series. Let me know if you would want to see that. March 25th, 1997, Biggie's last album, Life After Death, is released. And after this, there were multiple songs and albums that were done by Tupac and Biggie before their deaths that were released, as well as tribute songs and collaborations, etc. And they also both won awards after their death for their music. And I can go in depth in all of those details and all of those songs and awards if I do individual series on them. On September 27, 1997, Orlando Anderson sues Tupac's estate, Suge Knight, and Death Row. And this was for the injuries that he suffered after they beat him up, as well as severe emotional and mental distress. And people did think that this was a really weird move because it effectively put him back into the suspect pool and reminded everyone that he had a motive. December 16th, 1998, Haitian Jack sues Tupac's estate and Death Row Records for libel. He said that he never snitched, he was never setting Tupac up, and that his line about him working with the feds was libel. And Ayanna also said that there was no setup that she knew of. March 12th, 2005, Runnin' in parentheses Dying to Live by Tupac featuring Biggie wins top soundtrack of the year at the Rhythm and Soul Music Awards. In 2007, Haitian Jack got deported to Haiti for a nightclub shooting in 2004. And in 2009, a retired cop got Dwayne Davis, aka Keith D, aka Orlando Anderson's uncle, to confess to Tupac's shooting. He said he had cancer, he knew he was dying, and he wanted to make a confession. He said he was in the car with Orlando, he's the one who passed him the weapon, and that Orlando then shot Tupac. And I haven't seen anything about anything being done with these confessions, honestly. June 16th, 2011, Dexter Isaac claimed that he shot Tupac in the Quad Studios shooting. He worked with another record label owner named Jimmy Hinchman, and he's actually doing a life sentence right now for unrelated things. So Dexter Isaac said that he shot Tupac at the Quad shooting because he claimed that Jimmy Hinchman paid him to rob Tupac because he wanted a specific diamond that Tupac had for his girlfriend. And he says that he has proof that he did this because he still has one of the chains that they stole, but of course we can't know that because he's in prison and not at his house, and it's not at prison with him, obviously. He also made sure to say that he's not a government informant, he's not looking for anything from this, but he's just telling the truth. The craziest part, though, is that at the end, he says, "Now, I'm not going to talk about my friend Biggie's death or Tupac's death, but I would like to give their mother some closure. ... Jimmy, you and Puffy like to come off all innocent. I ask you, are you going to flip on Puffy when the feds get you?" Which really implicates them both in the deaths, I think. And of course, we have no way of knowing if this confession is legit or not, but it is interesting. And not even a week after this, Jimmy Hinchman was actually arrested on accusations of drug trafficking. And this is Jimmy Hinchman, and there he is with Puff. October 3rd, 2011, we get tapes of Dwayne Davis, aka Keith D, aka Orlando Anderson's uncle, talking about the shooting. First, he let us all know that he was completely lying in his 1997 interview when he said that Suge Knight was responsible. He claimed that he met Sean Combs, aka Puff, at the BET Awards a few years before, and they ended up using his 64 Chevy for Usher's Can I Get With It music video. And supposedly after this, him and Puff started discussing a possible hit on Suge Knight, and then after Tupac released Hit 'Em Up, Tupac was then part of the hit as well, that they wanted to do a hit on both Suge Knight and Tupac. And he claims that he and Orlando asked for $1 million for the hit. He said that there was another person named Big Dre with them, and that if the car had gone on the other side of them, then he himself would have been the one who pulled the trigger. He also claims that he and Suge Knight made eye contact, and Suge Knight definitely would have known it was him because they've known each other since childhood. Again, though, sometimes people confess to stuff that they didn't do for fame, for attention, for plea deals, what have you. So we can't, again, make sure that this is true, but very interesting. And then in October of 2018, Suge Knight's son posted on Instagram saying that Tupac was still alive and he was in Malaysia. He did delete those posts later, though, so no way to know if they're accurate, but I'm gonna guess not. So May 29th, 2021, this ex-FBI agent, Phil Carson, came out and said that they actually do know who was the shooter of Biggie. Supposedly, there are sealed documents that show that Suge Knight put out a hit on Sean Combs originally, and the shooter was a hired hitman named Amir Muhammad, and in the end, the hit ended up being on Biggie. And the motive was that Suge Knight was mad about Tupac's death and he wanted retaliation, and that he made these plans while he was in prison. And if we remember in one of my previous videos, the FBI documents did say that a certain person who had gone back because they didn't do well on their probation aligned with a Muslim group in prison where he formulated a hit. And Amir Muhammad, aka Harry Billups, was part of that Muslim group supposedly. And of course, supposedly, the hitman was actually the godfather to an LAPD officer's child, so clearly they were close, and that a bunch of LAPD cops apparently helped to cover it all up and even set it up a little bit. He has a movie about this, it's called City of Lies, it has Johnny Depp in it. Now, if you want to look into this further, this is the end of the series. Original Gangsta's book by Ben Westhoff, City of Lies movie, Biggie and Tupac Unsolved on Netflix, Biggie, I Got a Story to Tell on Netflix, The FBI Files, Last Man Standing, Suge Knight and the Unalivings of Biggie and Tupac, TupacLegacy.net. They have a ton of interviews, a ton of clippings, everything that you would need to talk about Tupac for the rest of your life, probably. unalive rap inside the Biggie and Tupac unalivings, the M word whenever I say unalive. Keef D, Compton Street legend. And I understand that it's annoying when I say unalive. I'm annoyed by it, but the app won't let me say that word, so. Sources. More sources. Even more sources. And more sources. Ooh, sources. I did a lot of work. So, this series is done. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to do a live at 5 o'clock on Sunday, as usual. I always have fun there. We can chat about opinions and all of that sort of stuff. You can hear what my personal theories are. If you would like any series, Death Row series, individual of these, put in my Google form. And if you have any thoughts on this case specifically, on either Tupac or Biggie, please comment them. Any more information, I'd love to know. And yeah, I spent a huge chunk of my life on this past week. So I really hope that y'all have enjoyed it. It took up all of my days.